Chapter 9. The Smurfs had looked in many, many windows. Clumsy was nowhere to be found, and they were exhausted. Still, they continued up the fire escape ladder, hopeful that they would find him soon. Night had fallen, and the full moon above was shining brightly.
Papa, I'm familiar with 613 shades of blue. That moon is not one of them.
Brainy stared at the sky.
The full moon is decidedly white.
Papa nodded thoughtfully. Stay calm, everyone. If the portal opened once, it can open again.
How are we going to open a magical portal when we can't even find Clumsy?
Grouchy was losing his patience. He was so very tired. Just then, Gutsy called down from higher up on the fire escape.
Hey, I think I see something up here.
Something in a higher-level apartment caught his eye.
Clumsy, is that you?
He whispered to himself. The Smurfs all scampered up to see for themselves. Inside that apartment, Clumsy was struggling to find a way out of the box in which he had traveled to this strange place. He pushed hard at the lid, only to find that his box was stationed right in the middle of a tall, heavy stack. The tower of cartons teetered as he tried to get free. After a few failed attempts, Clumsy gave the lid a gigantic shove. Stepping back to see what he'd done, Clumsy was relieved to find that he'd finally managed to force a hole large enough to escape through. On the lookout for any signs of danger, he nudged his head over the edge of the box and carefully peeked out. There was no one around. It looked safe enough. Clumsy pulled himself out and landed with a soft plop on the living room floor. He was surveying his surroundings when he noticed Patrick walking toward the door to the office. Huh? Clumsy nervously backed up, straight into a cold, wet dog nose. Ugh! Frightened, Clumsy ran. Elway tried to follow, but couldn't get enough traction on the wooden floors. Help! Help! Luckily, Clumsy made it to the bathroom, where he immediately shut the door. Elway slammed his head into the closed door with a bang. Clumsy had never before seen a room like the one he was in. The dog started pawing at the door as Clumsy scurried up the first thing he could grab hold of, the towel rack. Oh, Smurf! Clumsy exclaimed excitedly, lowering himself off the rack and into the sink. Finally, a safe place to stand. Feeling a bit calmer, he took a second to look around. His nose led him to something sweet-smelling, a nearby clear plastic container with a pump and a label that read, Bubble Boom. Next to the words was a picture of berries. Berry. Boom. Mmm. Hungry Clumsy sucked down a mouthful. Blah! It was disgusting. Clumsy burped up a huge bubble that popped right smack in his face. Startled by the pop, he fell back over the hairdryer, which accidentally turned on and blew him backward. Splash! Right into the toilet. After a short rest, Clumsy attempted to climb out of the bowl and onto the seat, using a dangling overhead chain for support, when, uh-oh, flush! He grabbed at the toilet paper roll to help halt his downward spinning descent, but instead he found himself right back inside the toilet bowl, swirling around on a wad of soggy paper from the roll that continued to unfurl before his very eyes. Outside the apartment, Gutsy showed the other Smurfs through the window. I'm sure this is the box, he told them, motioning to the cardboard box on the floor. Grouchy peeked into the apartment. When I get my hands on him! The Smurfs entered through an open window and tiptoed over to the box tower. Brainy put a finger to his lips. Shh! Someone's coming. Smurfs! Papa whispered. He motioned for them all to duck and hide. It was Grace. Elway, she called out, Having been awakened by Elway's clawing at the bathroom door, she finally got up to go see what all the fuss was about. Hearing her milling around outside made the Smurfs move even more quickly. They had to get Clumsy out of that box before she came in and found them there.
Come on, put a little Smurf into it,
Gutsy said, shoving at the cardboard. Hang on, Clumsy, Smurfette said, hoping Clumsy could hear her from inside the box. Shh! Quiet! Brainy warned again.
All together now,
Papa put his fingers next to Smurfette's. They climbed up on top of Clumsy's box, and together they pried open the lid. Ecstatic, they peered inside, frantically looking for Clumsy. The box was filled to the brim with papers, but there was no sign of Clumsy. Grouchy shook his head.
Aye, aye, aye. Now what, lads?
Gutsy asked. Smurfette shrugged. What happened to Clumsy?
I bet they ate him, Grouchy said. Let's go home.
Suddenly, the sound and vibration of heavy footsteps interrupted their search. Then the office door opened, and Patrick headed their way.
Hide! Dive! Dive!
Papa Smurf told them. All the Smurfs ducked low into the box, and Papa closed the lid over them. Whew! Just in time, because just then, Patrick picked up that very box and carried it into his office. Searching for some documents he needed, Patrick reached inside. Instead of finding papers, he discovered 5 little blue faces staring up at him. Ah! Patrick shouted in surprise. Ah! The Smurfs yelled back. Outside the bathroom, Grace pushed Elway aside to see what was driving the dog mad. Entering the room, she found a roll of soggy toilet paper stuffed in the toilet. Elway, did you do that? She asked the dog, lifting the mess out with the toilet brush. She gave the dog a reprimanding tap on the nose. Then she started to toss the paper from the toilet into the trash bin. That's when the paper began to wiggle. Ah! Grace screamed, seeing Clumsy's little blue head poking out from the soggy clump of paper. Clumsy shrieked back. Scared witless, Grace panicked and flung Clumsy off the brush and against the windowsill like a bug. Clumsy's shriek could be heard throughout the apartment, even inside Patrick's office.
That's Clumsy,
Papa said worriedly, cupping his ear to listen through the box.
Charge, Smurfs! Charge!
Gutsy leaped out of the box and slammed into Patrick's leg. When Patrick fell to the ground, the Smurfs ran right over him toward the door. Clumsy! Smurfette shouted. We're coming! On his way out, Grouchy left Patrick with a little parting gift.
This is for Clumsy,
he growled, kicking Patrick just below the chin.
Wait for me,
Brainy cried, trying to keep up. Inside the bathroom, Clumsy was cowering up against the windowsill. Please don't hurt me. I just want to go home. Are you? Did you just talk? Grace asked, eyeing him suspiciously, the wet toilet brush dangling from one hand. I'm not saying till you put down that giant spiky thing, he cried. Clumsy, he heard Smurfette call out from the living room. Where are you? Smurf us a sign.
Smurf out! Smurf out! Wherever you are!
Another Smurf yelled.
Can you hear us?
They shouted in unison. Patrick peeled himself off the floor, grabbed an umbrella, and began chasing the Smurfs around the living room. Swinging wildly at their wee little heads, he tried desperately to force them toward the front door of the apartment.
Get out of here,
he screamed, taking a swipe at Smurfette.
Back to the sewers!
Smurfette ducked. Gutsy broke away from the group and scrambled up the fireplace onto the mantel.
You lot find Clumsy. The giant is mine.
Then he took a giant leap off the mantel and crash-landed right on Patrick's back. Patrick spun round and round, swinging his umbrella this way and that in an effort to pry the creature off his back. On his last swing, he accidentally hit himself in the head. Exhausted and injured, he collapsed to the ground in a heap.
Have you had enough? Tap out,
Gutsy teased. With Patrick distracted, Papa was able to scope out where Clumsy's voice was coming from. Over here, quickly! He motioned for the other Smurfs to follow him. Inside the bathroom, Grace was still in shock. Okay, so you're you're blue, and... Oh! She noticed that Clumsy was shivering from cold and fright. Oh gosh, are you okay? She asked, genuinely concerned. Hearing Grace, Grouchy got a better reading on where the voices were coming from.
This way,
he directed. Clumsy, where are you? Smurfette asked again, desperate to find her missing friend. Hearing the Smurfs' voices in the hallway, Elway burst through the bathroom door and rushed into the hall to see who was out there. Barking fiercely, protective of Grace, he blocked their entrance to the restroom. Defeated, but only for the moment, the Smurfs retreated and ran back to the living room. Elway chased them.
Look out!
Brainy warned, seeing that Elway was quickly approaching. Grouchy turned around.
Other way!
Patrick, who had just recovered after knocking himself out with the umbrella, stood up, only to be accosted yet again by a chain of little blue creatures weaving circles around his legs, with Elway close behind.
Run, Smurfs!
Gutsy said. Then he turned his attention to Elway.
You big, hairy, ugly cat!
He taunted from behind Patrick's leg. Elway launched himself at Gutsy.
Elway!
Patrick shouted, but it was too late. The dog plowed into him, knocking him over again. Having finally bagged the giant, Gutsy began to lasso Patrick's hands together.
Stop bleating like a sheep and let me hog tie ya, you wrinkly numpkin.
Unable to move, he could only warn Grace when he spied the other Smurfs headed for the bathroom.
Grace, we're being attacked. Do not be tricked by their cuteness.
It's okay, Grace told him calmly, entering the living room carrying Clumsy lovingly in her arms. They're friendly.
You're lucky your lassie stepped in, Gutsy warned Patrick. I was about to make haggis of your innards.
Patrick took a long, hard look at the little blue creature by his side. Then he closed his tired eyes and wished that this was all just one big, crazy dream. Deep in the basement of Belvedere Castle, Gargamel was hard at work in his new laboratory. A candlelit flame burned below an old coffee urn, heating up a smoky substance. The vapor from the potion was being sucked through a long nozzle connected to an elaborate contraption. Gargamel held up a strand of Smurfette's hair. It glistened in the flickering candlelight.
This is it, Azrael,
Gargamel announced.
Smurfette's hair goes in here, through this Smurf essence extractor, and finally, I have my Smurfulator.
Gargamel clapped his hands.
Ha! It's the pièce de résistance, the crème de la...
The wizard looked over and found that Azrael was too busy licking his own butt to listen. Gargamel sighed.
If I could do that, I wouldn't care about Smurfs either.
Turning back to his machinery, with a flick of his wrist, he dropped the hair into the funnel-shaped top of the contraption. It began to whir as the engine kicked into action. Gargamel waited patiently.
Yes,
he declared when a single drop of iridescent blue liquid gathered at the bottom of the spout.
With this precious elixir, my spells will be powerful beyond all measurable measurement.
He captured the drop in his open signet ring and closed it tightly. The center stone glowed brightly, a nod to the incredible power that was housed inside. Gargamel showed the ring to Azrael.
Ah, this one tiny drop will give me the power to capture them all,
he exclaimed triumphantly. His plan was finally falling into place. Soon enough, he would have the Smurfs right where he wanted them.